Analysis of Father Anthony Akpanessien, misconduct. The misconduct of Father Anthony Akpanessien was formally confirmed by the Archdiocese of Toronto in an official pastoral notice dated April 11, 2023. The Archdiocese stated that it had become aware of inappropriate conduct involving boundary violations with an adult female parishioner, which was inconsistent with the vows and expectations of a Catholic priest. His priestly faculties were immediately removed, meaning he could no longer celebrate sacraments, hear confessions, or engage in any pastoral ministry in the Archdiocese. He was removed from his parish, and he was required to return to his home diocese in Nigeria for discipline by his bishop. Additional details from contemporaneous reports and discussions, including the publicly referenced letter from the Archdiocese, indicate the violations occurred in the context of spiritual counseling. Father Akpanessien was providing spiritual counseling to a married couple, both the husband and the wife, at the same time. The misconduct involved sexual and spiritual misconduct with the wife during this counseling relationship, crossing into intimate, sexual contact/relations. This dual counseling role created an especially severe conflict, as he held privileged, intimate knowledge of the couple's marriage and personal lives from both spouses. Why the misconduct was considered particularly egregious. This case stands out as especially grave for several interconnected reasons in Catholic pastoral ethics, canon law, and professional standards. 1. Exploitation of a sacred, fiduciary role. Spiritual counseling involves profound vulnerability. The directee shares sins, emotional struggles, relational issues, doubts, and personal secrets, expecting absolute confidentiality, non-judgmental guidance, and spiritual help. Sexual involvement transforms this into exploitation, betraying the core purpose of the ministry. 2. Simultaneous counseling of both spouses. This introduced a direct conflict of interest and betrayal of marital trust. The priest's actions undermined the couple's relationship while abusing the authority he held over both in their faith lives. 3. Compounding spiritual abuse. The misconduct carried a spiritual dimension, meaning it intertwined sexual acts with the religious authority dynamic. For example, framing intimacy as part of spiritual guidance or using spiritual language to justify or deepen the involvement. This can cause deep, long-lasting spiritual trauma, including loss of faith, guilt, or distorted views of God and the Church. 4. Violation of clerical celibacy and scandal. Priests in the Roman Rite are bound to celibacy and to avoid actions causing scandal. Such conduct damages public trust in the priesthood and the institution as a whole. 5. Power abuse in a position of authority. The Church views this not merely as a private moral failing but as an abuse of the ministerial office, warranting permanent removal from active ministry to prevent further harm. The Archdiocese's response, swift, decisive, and without reinstatement in Toronto, reflects how seriously it regarded the verified allegations. Power imbalance and position of trust. In spiritual counseling or direction, the relationship is inherently asymmetrical. The priest holds spiritual authority as an ordained representative of Christ and the Church, often seen as a conduit for God's grace, forgiveness, and moral insight. The parishioner/directee is in a vulnerable position, disclosing deeply personal matters while depending on the priest for guidance, absolution, or emotional/spiritual support. This creates dependency and an imbalance where the priest controls the boundaries, interpretation of events, and potential spiritual consequences of refusing advances. Counseling both spouses amplified this. The priest had insider knowledge from both sides, making refusal or disclosure feel even more spiritually or socially risky. This mirrors fiduciary relationships, for example, therapist-client, doctor-patient, where one party has disproportionate power, knowledge, and influence. Why genuine consent is considered impossible or invalid. Even if the adult woman appeared willing or initiated contact, meaningful consent is widely regarded as impossible due to the structural dynamics. 1. The power differential inherently involves coercion, subtle or overt, such as perceived spiritual repercussions, for example, loss of grace, judgment, or community standing, idealization of the priest, or guilt manipulation. 2. Vatican norms, for example, updates to Vos Estis Lux Mundi since 2019, and church policies now treat sexual acts involving an abuse of authority in pastoral relationships as gravely illicit, even with adults, because true freedom is compromised. 3. Professional ethics, paralleling secular counseling, hold that consent cannot be freely given when one party holds institutional, emotional, or spiritual leverage. 4. The dual spouse element further erodes voluntariness, as the woman's position was entangled in marital and spiritual dependencies overseen by the same authority figure. In essence, what might superficially look consensual is classified as exploitative abuse because free, uncoerced choice is structurally undermined. Why criminal charges are often not laid despite the abusive nature. Criminal charges are not automatic or common in cases like this. Adult parishioner, no minors involved, particularly in Canada/Ontario, for several reasons. 1. Lack of specific criminal statute targeting clergy adult counseling misconduct. Unlike some U.S. states, for example Texas or Minnesota, that explicitly criminalize sexual contact between clergy/counselors and those receiving spiritual/religious counsel, Canadian criminal law does not have a direct equivalent offense for non-minor adults. Sexual assault requires proof of non-consent, force, threat, fraud, or incapacity to consent, which is difficult when the interaction appears mutual on the surface. 2. Consent appears present. Even if ethically invalid due to power imbalance, apparent willingness often means prosecutors cannot meet the criminal standard of beyond a reasonable doubt for non-consent. 3. No mandatory reporting for adult cases. In Canada, mandatory reporting laws, e.g., under child protection statutes, apply primarily to minors or vulnerable persons with diminished capacity. Adult-on-adult clergy misconduct typically stays internal to the church unless the victim reports to police and evidence supports charges. 4. Victim reluctance. Many victims avoid criminal processes due to privacy concerns, spiritual shame, fear of disbelief, or institutional pressure. The church often handles these disciplinarily, removal from ministry, rather than pushing criminal referral. 5. Focus on ecclesiastical discipline. The Church prioritizes canonical penalties, e.g., laicization or faculty removal, over civil prosecution in adult cases, especially when no minors are involved. In Father Akpanessien's case, it was treated as an internal boundary violation matter involving consenting adults. The abusive elements remain profoundly unethical and warrant severe church sanctions, but they do not always cross the threshold for criminal prosecution under current Canadian law.